So I'm Kathryn. This is my plan of intentionality. I just decided to phrase it differently, of living intentionally. So I'm from Durham, North Carolina. I grew up there most of my life. I graduated from NC State with a degree in communications with a concentration in public relations. I'm an ENFP, for those of you who know Myers-Briggs, and I think I'm a type 9 on Enneagram, but I don't like to say that confidently because I don't like to define myself. But, and I became a fellow for multiple reasons. I had heard of the program in general, the whole Fellows Initiative, and I knew great things about it, but specifically the Chattanooga one. I had a friend who did it a couple years ago, and she just raved about Jonathan and the structure of it and how intentional it was and how it really helped her know what to do in a community environment, how to live out faithfully what God has called her to do. And so that was just really cool to hear that from her. And so I applied and I had my interview with Jonathan, and that went great, and I just felt really seen and heard in what I was wanting, what I was desiring for my next year after college. And I just really wanted that structure too, right out of college, especially with COVID hitting and losing that sense of structure. I actually moved to the beach away from my college life when it first began. So I was just excited to come back into community and embrace a new life here. So just a little bit about me. Oh, I didn't start my timer, but that's okay. My workplace, I had a unique experience maybe. I had 2 different jobs throughout my time here. And so coming in, I interviewed with a consulting firm, and I got really excited about that because I was like, well, this sounds really fancy. I don't know anything about business. My internships with COVID were a little different. I worked at an art gallery. I did like a whole event planning. So I'd done multiple things, but those also were impacted by COVID. Some things got canceled. It wasn't as busy. So I was nervous coming in. I was like, okay, I'm doing this like fancy job, like gonna learn a lot. I was a little overwhelmed. And it started off great. I liked my boss. I liked what I was doing. It just wasn't as busy as I thought it was, and it was a little lonely because we had this huge studio space, as you see on the screen, but people would come in maybe once every couple weeks, and then other than that, it was just me and one other person there. So there wasn't as people-oriented as I had hoped it would be, and just things didn't work out in the end. They didn't have enough for me to do to stay on, really, was the end goal. So then I switched, and I also picked a word for each slide, and so workplace, serving in the workplace. And so I found that role there of how I could help with the studio and community there. But then when I switched into a role at a nonprofit, it's an addiction recovery center, I found the service there came more naturally maybe. I was more involved with people. I was able to see the goal of helping people through addiction and the tools that they were learning, and just it became more interactive. And so this is a volunteer we have there, Marty. She comes in every Tuesday, and so she brought me flowers one day. And it's just so cool to see how people work differently in different environments. And in each of these environments, I've learned my gifts and talents. And yeah, I came in with an expectation to fellows of like, oh, this is what I'll get out of it. I'm gonna try to benefit myself and like see how I work. But it's more through like the workplace and the people there that I've learned how I can best serve and what I can use my gifts for. So it's kind of a summary, but it's been great, and I can truly see how God like shapes and orchestrates one's career path through all these stories we've also heard. There's been so many honest stories of like how one person started off one place, and then by the end of their career or where they're at now, like maybe midlife, they're like, oh, I've done so many different jobs. And so I've been really encouraged through that. And how careers shouldn't define you, but highlight your strengths and abilities. And God will use that in whatever ways. And also is repeated that like work-life balance isn't really a thing. It's kind of a myth, but just balancing faithfulness in that, whether it's your work might need more time from you at one point, and then your family might need more time from you, or personal life. So just like really allowing yourself to be called to where you are in that moment, in that day, and just serving faithfully. And there's a time and a season for each job. So that's just been encouraging because I came in wanting framework and direction for my job. And I just know that God will use me wherever I go, and it's not this huge weight that needs to be on me, but He'll use me. So on to community. And then the word I picked for this was blessed. It's just been such a blessing, and I've been able to see how people have been blessing others in the community through our Monday night dinners, through living with my host family. That's the little baby in my family. She was not 1 there, but now she's like 1.5, so it's kind of crazy. And then the fellows, getting to be in community with them, do classes of Old and New Testament alongside of them. And then that's a picture from our lock-in, middle school lock-in, and that's a Kat and I, maybe at 4 a.m. She was a previous fellow last year, and we were just doing a check-in selfie. But it's just so cool to see how community has been such a big part. I know Sarah touched on it, of like how it really forms you the most. And I was like, that was probably my most excited part, because that's what I love. I wasn't so thrilled about a job and working full-time and all that, or gonna have to work full-time, but it's just been such a blessing to learn from these people on the slide and being in a host family, because I already touched on COVID and how that impacted my college community. And I just really wanted to know how to invest and how to form those deeply rooted relationships. And I've learned so much. I'm an avid lover of stories, like movies and books and songs. And so I feel like I've just gotten a front row seat to what being the hands and feet of Christ looks like here or anywhere, and how to get plugged into a city, and how to live in various ways. And I feel like such an example through our dinners and through people we've met at nonprofits and vocational lunches. People, I could mention so many names, and I know Sarah did, but people live with such conviction and intention here, and I feel like that's something I've been trying to figure out. Like, often you can feel convicted for all that you want to do and what you desire, and you have good intentions, but you can get stuck in that in between. And I just have been able to see how you can hold both and move forward and fully live in that and love in that. And so that's just been awesome to see how people are faithfully doing that and blessing others super intentionally. And I know Sarah mentioned the Baldwins, but I loved when they mentioned they had their spaghetti night dinners where they could like invite people from the grocery store, like anyone that they would meet during their day. They'd be like, oh, we're having this dinner on, I think it was like Thursday night or Friday night, and they just would invite people over just to be in community with them, and I thought that was really awesome. So that's just a couple things about community. And then integrating faith, there's Maddie in this photo, and then a fire that Aaron and I built, and I think Maddie helped in with some kerosene. But but yeah, it's something that I think of as the steadfastness of the Lord. And so in this picture of Maddie and the sunset, I feel like you can, or I've been able to really see how the Lord's been working so faithfully, and how like whatever the day is, if it's thunderstormy, if it's like been windy and rough, at the end of the day, the sun will set and God's like grace is there and it's consistent. So that's been such a beautiful reminder, and I thought that picture kind of depicted that. But then also how we should like steadily be on fire for Christ, and it's not something that should ever burn out. And that's just, I feel like that's what it means to be faithful. And that's something I really came into the program desiring, because I knew my faith, but I felt disconnected. And so I wanted to really make that more of an active thing rather than just a head thing, a heart thing to live out. And I just feel like I've been applying like little nuggets of wisdom constantly by witnessing others' testimonies and stories and faithfulness and difficulties. Like Sarah mentioned, like Ashley Jones, like her story of grief and loss, and then how she can use her gifts to bless others in their pain, and just be with them and bear with them and point them to Christ. And so it's just amazing to see the faithfulness and remembering who God is and who he says he is and what he's done. And just in these past 9 months, I just have been able to see so much of what he's done and is doing. And not only my life, but others' lives. And I feel like studying the Bible in our classes have really incorporated that into day-to-day living as well, with our Old Testament class, our New Testament class, our counseling with Liz, as we referred it to when she walked us through a book on just like how to process our own stories and how God's faithful in that. That's been something that's been really consistent. And then I feel like this has just been such a season of growing. So the word I picked for that is just like absorb. So I've been trying to absorb it all. By studying God's word, like I said in our class, Old and New Testament. And then just doing life together, whether it's with my host family or with these other fellows. I feel like I'm just constantly learning a lot. And that's been really cool, whether we go to Coolidge between class, walking the bridge. We've had plenty of Mexican together, Mexican food. We never pass it up. Yeah, and then just embracing change in the mundane, so like my job switch and how to live faithfully day to day, whether you feel good or you don't feel good, or other things are going as planned. Just even when things feel monotonous and mundane, that God's consistent and His grace is sufficient and He's doing things, whether we can see it or not. But like looking back on these 9 months, I can totally see how He's been working. And then, yeah, just discovering my top values, what I'm searching for in the workplace, what I really value most about a job or about where I'm living, and trying to integrate that. And then boldly diving into the unknown. I feel like a lot of times I'll do like a little splash and then I see the unknown and I'm like, no, never mind. But I just want to like keep diving into the unknown by asking intentional questions and like not being afraid. And I know Sarah also talked about fear, but like it's okay to be fearful, but also like we need to trust God and to know that He'll provide, and He has that plan A for us and not a plan B or C, but like He knows exactly what we need and knows our hearts, and He's with us through that growing process and navigating everything. And so then, let's see. But yeah, I just want to keep like embracing life moving forward. I feel like a common thing before coming to the Fellows was like I would kind of like disassociate myself when I got tired, or like I'd spend free time with like, oh, I need to like self-care, whatever. But I just want to make sure I'm like still moving forward and like associating with people, and so loving people well and inviting them to the table. And so I kind of talk about that in my next slide some more. So some reflections and goals. I just feel like I've realized investing in a community is so worthwhile, and I know it takes time, but like the Fellows has really helped us dive in really fast. And then always asking questions. I feel like with such a small group, I felt more comfortable to ask questions, and it was just easier to get to know people faster and take time to do that. And then also reaching out. We've been encouraged. We got this whole list from Emily of people we've met with this year, and so like to not be afraid to even reach out, even if it feels like a loose connection or they may not remember me specifically, but they did talk to us like to constantly reach out, because we're like made for connection and community and to build those relationships. So that's something I want to continue to do. And then hosting. I know Sarah mentioned this as well, but we'll be living together next year, Lord willing, in a house that we find soon. But we want to invite people over and just have community with them and invite them to the table, because we've already been blessed in so many ways. So we want to continue to do that. And then the power of prayer. I just know that since God is guiding and directing every moment, just like inviting Him into that has been something I've been working on, just so I can feel His presence more like clearly and more with me. So I just wanted to continue to do that as well. Yeah, that's just kind of some things that I've learned this year. And I just want to thank you, Jonathan and Emily, and everyone who came and spoke to us and hosted us. It's just been such a joy to get to be here, and I feel like it was a whirlwind and it blew by, but it's just every moment's been so special, and I'm excited to continue living here in Chattanooga and keep forming those relationships we've built. So, yeah, thank you.